Okay, I believe we're live now. Good to see everybody this evening here. Morning for you. Before I get started, I'll give Alan just a second longer to get here. I'm not sure where he's at, but he's on his way, I think. I hope. But I had put out on Facebook, my cousin had gotten a hold of me out of Marsh Harbor, Abaco Island, the Northern Islands. Just Dorian, devastating storm. And I know how media is. Media is trying to hide what went on. He said his house was completely gone. He lived in a subdivision. There was no houses anywhere, splinters everywhere. And he said, you know how the Haitians used to live here, Brother Parnell? They were just hundreds upon hundreds and thousands of them stretched out forever in these open fields with huts. And he said, it's all gone. He said, all you can do now is smell bodies. So he said, they're trying to tell you maybe there was 200 or 300 or 400. But he said, we had heard while we were still in Abaco, which was last week, we heard that they had already sent over 3,000 body bags just to that one little place, Marsh Harbor. So there's literal thousands upon thousands of people, loved ones of the Haitians, people that we've loved, people that I've known. He made it out alive, and it's a very sad situation. It's sad that they're really trying to hide all the devastation, saying that not many were killed. He said it's just nasty, amazing nasty. He said you can't even catch your breath hardly when they left there. They are in Spanish Wells now. They've gotten settled in and everything seems to be going well. They're getting at least a meal a day and people are treating them very nice. And he's getting all of his papers set to come to Florida. So be in prayer for him. And I did put out a fundraiser. And for those of you that have given so far, God bless you and thank you. It means a lot. I'm going to make sure he gets every penny of it. There are so many on Facebook that have donated, and then there are many others who have told me don't take the fundraiser down right away because we want to donate. We're gathering from our churches, or we're doing this or we're doing that. So it's still up and it will remain up for a while. If you can donate, it will be greatly appreciated for him and his family and the loved ones of theirs that are trying to start over after all of the devastation. So, having said that, love bless each one of you that are doing what you can. You know, I want to say this too. It's got nothing to do with what Don Parnell believes or Tori Alonso. It's got nothing to do with what I believe. He said, well, I can't donate to that fund because it is, I got a lot of family. I don't even see them putting a thing on there. Call themselves Christian. Maybe that's what they are. They're just Christians. Christians are denominations. Mm-hmm. Not putting a thing on there, not a penny. But they say they love our brother, Joseph Whitlock. Well, love bless you. I'm sure in your own way you love him, but it's just amazing to me that you could let hatred overpower the need of our brother. I couldn't do it myself. So, looking forward to what we can do for him. It won't be too much longer. And hopefully he will be to where we can get him what we have collected. Brother Daryl and Denise Mill, I do want to say this, they donated $500. But Daryl doesn't put his credit card out there just anywhere, and he didn't want to put it out on Facebook. Facebook is giving him a tough way to go, and he's afraid they'll just give him trouble or give me trouble once they see his name there. So he and Sister Denise, I keep thanking people, and all your names are right there. That is Snipes doing and Facebook's doing, not mine. But all your names are right there. And I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that Daryl and Denise have donated a very good amount. And love bless you guys too. So we will get started. And it's Tuesday evening, it's not Sunday morning. But I have kind of where we started or left off at last week. I wanted to come back to it and then go from there. But we talked about kind of leaving off the dispensations and the frequencies that we go into, or when we lay this flesh body down, what happens to us. And someone had written about the Jesus hanging on the cross and the two thieves, and they said, where did the one thief go where Jesus said, this day thou shalt be with me, or you're going to be with me in paradise? And where did the other thief go where that he was reviling Jesus and making bad remarks, and if thou be the Son of God, come down off the cross and save us all, and so many comments like that. And Jesus told the one, you'll be with me today in paradise. He didn't address the other. Where did he go? So that was kind of where we left off at. I have a lot of thoughts of my own about it. And I think everything is a condition. Mm-hmm. If they went, I just hate to use that word, went somewhere. They fell into the illusions and the realities of the condition they were in. One of them was a thief. He was definitely had problems, or he wouldn't have been hanging there on the cross. But hanging there on the cross, he worked through his anguish, his condemnation, his guilt. He worked through all of those things, and he began to make statements looking at Jesus, saying that, and saying to the people, I'm a thief, and I'm this, and I'm that, and I know what I've done, and I deserve to be here. I deserve to be right here in the condition I'm in because I created this condition.
Right.
I created myself to be a thief. I got myself caught. I got myself hanging on Calvary's hill. And so then he turns and looks to Jesus and tells the people, but this man has done nothing. He is innocent. He's only healed your babies. He's only done all these things for you. And he said he does not deserve to be here. And then he says to Jesus, when you get to the kingdom where you're going, remember me. Mm-hmm. What did that guy do? What did he do to come to that point in his life when maybe he had never thought of that?
He accepted his situation. He looked at Jesus, who was innocent, and he saw the way he accepted his situation, and it touched him. It touched him in his heart to where he said, if he can accept his condition, being innocent, how much more should I be able to accept my situation, being guilty? And he accepted the situation that he was in. Now he was still under the old teaching, thinking that he was going to go someplace, heaven, paradise, but it wasn't really that. I'm sure once he crossed over, he realized a lot more, but he accepted his situation, and in doing so, he found peace. He found rest, where the other one was total resistance all the way to the end and left in unrest.
Amen. He actually was at a point in his life that he took a good look inward at himself.
Mm-hmm.
He realized that he had manifested things, had chose a path that had driven him to that point. And as we have said so many times, you can change the path that you are on by changing the way you think, the attitudes that you have, by changing all those things. And so we have those things happening in his life, and he is changing. And that's how, if what you say and do doesn't matter, then Jesus would have said to both of them this day,
Right.
stop worrying. I am going to save you, and I am going to get off this cross. Just be still. Stop worrying. Don't worry about your guilt. Don't worry about any of those things, sir. Today you're going to be with me in paradise because of your attitude. He would have addressed them both, but Jesus addressed the one because he was willing to change, to redirect his path, and take on a whole different attitude. Whereas this guy, in the middle of his death, was angry with himself and with the world. If you're the Son of God, if you're who you say you are, come off of the cross and save us. You're not who you say you are, or you wouldn't just hang there in the middle of it. And he was reviling him, I think the scripture said. Jesus never addressed that issue because that's not where he's at. That's not where he's at. He's looking for change. He's looking for attitude. He's looking, and as long as you're sitting in that condition, you know who's got to work you out of that condition? You. You're the one. You've got to work yourself out of that condition. You've got to come to a condition in your life to where you say, this is not me. This is not, I don't want to break into the next world like this. I don't want to look like this. Yes, I've had a path like this, but I want to be different. And a lot of us have had the paths that we had. But here we see that, Alan must be here.
She grabbed somebody's shoe and running with it.
So we want to come to a point in our life to where Jesus Christ is able to address and change things for us.
Yeah.
That's what we want to come to. Now, where did they go? This one who was able and willing and wanting to change, he went into a greater position. He went into a greater understanding. He moved into a greater form of life. He moved into a higher consciousness, if you want to call it that. He moved into so many things. And he came out of that, quote, hellish condition that he was in and began to move more into the path of a condition of rest. Right. He come out of unrest and rest. But this other guy, where did he go? When his flesh was finished on Calvary, he went exactly to the illusion that he had created. No one there to help him. No one there that had any kind of power or authority to do anything for him. Can't even help myself. Mm-hmm. He went into that world of conditions, and he had to work himself out of that condition. Right. Wherever he went. Right. Whatever dimension, whatever frequency he dropped into, and of course we know those frequencies are the lower frequencies. And whatever frequency he dropped into, he remained there, working himself out of that condition up to where he could look at Calvary one day and say, boy, I should have been a lot different there. Mm-hmm. I should have acted a lot different. That was my chance to bust out of all this. But now I realize it. Now I realize what's going on. And he will one day, if he hasn't already, he will one day move from that condition into a higher consciousness and a higher understanding. So it's a matter of your mind as to where you go.
Remember when we talked about when you had put out the 7, starting with darkness, elements, time, science, unrest, enlightenment, understanding. The thief on the cross, both of them were in unrest. And he moved himself out of unrest into that next cycle of enlightenment.
Yes.
Now, what did that do for him? It put him in the 7th one. The 7th one is total understanding. It's, like another way you put it, creativity. There's where you have to be in that condition to be creative. So what he was able to do, he was able to step into a condition to wherever he transformed himself into, now he was able to create from there, where the other one was not able to create because he was still in unrest and he still had to progress to a point. So he's stuck there. He can't, no one can help him, and he can't even create a new situation until he deals with that.
He's still down here in the areas of darkness, unknown, and in the areas of elements and time. He's in all of those different things, and he's having such a hard time there in those areas, and he's not moving out of them. Whereas the other one is moving out of them. Just pull that door shut. And the other ones are, you don't have to now, I think they're, oh. But we see that, that the 2 of them were caught 2 different conditions there on the cross.
Right.
And Jesus was the, if you'd want to call it, the portal for both of them. And the one chose to stay where he was at, and the other chose to change. And each one of us are that way every day. Listen to me. It's not like over here's a thief and he's a horrible guy and he never changed, and over here's a thief but he's a real humble guy and he changed. Both of those are you. And you either, many days you stay in darkness. You choose the unknown in such a manner that you don't want to progress. You do that. And you stay in that, and then maybe you come to a point to where you say, you know what? I've been in this down cycle long enough. I've lost enough. I've hurt enough. I've done all. I've got to get out of this. And then you become this guy over here.
Right.
You become this thief on the cross, and your conditions, you begin to say, I need to change these conditions. And as you change them in your mind and do the things that you need to do to pull yourself out of that darkness, or to pull yourself to enlightenment, rest, understanding, you will find that a lot of those cycles begin to go away. I actually put something out on Facebook where I said that all of us have down cycles. And it's a dilemma how you get out of them sometimes. It's you just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn next. I have this problem, I have this problem. And when I thought this was, my body was that way. I fell into colon cancer, and then I had a hernia, and then I was checked for polyps and had another polyp they thought might be cancerous. I went back in for an operation. That operation didn't go well, picked up staph infections, went back in for that for 5 or 6 days, picked up another hernia from it, went back in for that, and I thought it was all over. And then there's another hernia shows up, and I'm thinking, geez, what's going on here? So I had to go through another hernia operation, and so I'm thinking, just a couple of days ago, I was thinking, I'm out of this down cycle. I'm out of it. And I woke up one morning and I could not walk. I had to have a cane. It was gone. I done a little walk outside. I felt my foot snap and I couldn't walk. And that's just been about 3 days ago. And I got into a podiatrist. He done what he needed to do, checked it out and said it's this and this and this. And they got me back to fairly normal. But my body, every time I thought I had a relief section, something else happened. Relieved, something else happened. Relieved, something else happened. When I find myself going through those, I find that if I will react in a blessing, just react. When I'm losing something, give something away.
Mm-hmm.
Just give it away.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin, I seen him down there. And I'm going through all this with my body. I got through with the operation on the 27th. Everything happened to him. He finally got in touch with me, let me know he's still alive. And then all of this is trying to heal my feet and everything else. And I just said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start giving stuff away. I gave away the first $320, and I'm going to give more to him. I set up a fund for him. I began to give things away out here. I gave this away. I gave that away. There's people that are here and know that I just give things away. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I can beat that cycle by doing that. Mm-hmm. That is because I know I'm blessing them. And if I'm blessing them, it's going to be a blessing on me. Mm-hmm. So the best way to defeat a down cycle is to be a blessing.
Yes.
Instead of fussing and arguing, right, crying and complaining, be a blessing. When a person says they need something and you're in a down cycle, maybe you cannot give it to them, but you can give them some of it. You can help them in some way. Sure. You can do something in order to pull that cycle around and get a blessing back around again. Yeah. And I see that happening to me. It is all that down cycle has slowed up, and I see things happening to me. I feel very refreshed. I feel good. I feel like the Lord has blessed me. We have to do those things, or we should do those things in our lives. You may have your own special way of defeating these cycles, but they show up in your life. Mm-hmm. Good cycles, I call them good, cycles where you can learn many things, and maybe cycles over here that give you, and cycles over here that take away from you. Yeah. And when you're in the middle of a cycle where people are giving you things, a whole lot of times when I'm receiving what I'm being given, I'm thinking to myself, because I learned how to say thank you and take. I've learned how to do that. Just somebody offer me $50, say thank you, take it. They offer me a cake, thank you, take it. And then they offer me a table, thank you, take it. The reason I do that is because in my mind I'm thinking, even though I don't need a table one, even though I don't need $50, I will take it thinking, who can I give this to? Yes. Mm-hmm. I know Alan, a lot of times I will give him suits, and he says, if they don't fit me, they'll fit somebody, and he'll give them away. Things like that. So all the time, in order to defeat the down cycles, be thinking about what you can do to bless. And when you're in the giving cycle, people are giving, you're thinking, wow, this is coming in, this is coming in. Mm-hmm. Don't sit back and say, no, don't give that, I don't need that, no. If you do that, you're doing two things. You're taking away a blessing to them for giving it, and you're taking away a blessing to yourself and someone else, because now you can take this and give it to who you want. Mm-hmm. It's yours. I gave somebody a car one time, and they, it was forever. And finally they came up to me one day and they said, Brother Parnell, I've been thinking about selling this car. Are you okay with it? I said, I gave you that car. It ain't got nothing to do with me. It's your car. If you want to give it away, give it away. There's nothing to do with me. I've received my blessing. Now you go and receive yours. It's all in your hands. And it's like people, they'll pay their tithes. They'll give tithes, and they'll give tithes, and then all of a sudden the man they're giving tithes to, he ends up being whatever they don't think he should be. He's no good. So they stop paying their tithes. And So they'll tell me, should I continue to pay my tithes to such a man? I said, I never have paid my tithes to such a man. I pay my tithes to the Lord. If that man drinks off of it, if that man sleeps with women off of it, or if that man goes overseas and does all the good he can do off of it, or if he gives it all away, none of those are any of my business.
Right.
None of them. My business is I gave to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be up to him what he does with it, and that's between him and the Lord. That's not between me and you, or me and him. It's between him and the Lord. When we can come to that understanding, you can get these blessings. You can receive the giving cycle, and you can, during the down cycle, begin to flood things away and push them out and say, here, you have this, and you have this, and you defeat those cycles.
Yeah.
You defeat them. It's frequencies. It's actual dimensions. This man on the cross did exactly that. All three of them were in a down cycle. All of them.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus was being crucified. The two men on the cross were receiving their reward for the things they had done in life. And the one in the middle of all that down cycle wanted to give praise and thank you to Jesus Christ. I deserve to be here. You don't. And when you get to your place, wherever you're going, your kingdom, please remember me. I want to be where you're at. That was a great blessing within itself by hanging right there in front of the people by the hundreds and showing them how you felt about that man. A lot of people don't know how to do that. A lot of people have no idea.
Keep in mind positive and negative energies. Everything has positive and negative energy. Whatever cycle you're in, whether it's a down cycle, up, revolving around you's choices of positive and negative energy. It's right there. When you're in that down cycle and you choose to do something positive, you choose to put out positive energy, what does that do? It attracts positive energy. Positive attracts positive. And positive things start to gravitate to you. And naturally, when things positive are attracted, then the negative gets repelled. So it's even scientific what he is saying. It works in a cycle that can't be broken. It is always going to be, if you go positive in a negative situation or a positive situation, positive will come back to you. It gravitates to it.
Yes.
Mathematics.
Mathematics, it's right there.
Two negatives make one.
Positive.
It will always happen.
Mm-hmm.
It will come back around,
Mm-hmm.
and it will come back to you, either in a negative or a positive, depending on the mathematics
Right.
that you use.
Right. It's right there.
Yep.
And the two on the cross, the three on the cross, I'm sorry, but two on either side of Jesus, we used to think that one went to heaven and repented right then and received this new birth and went to heaven, and the other one went to hell. Well, we know now there's no such thing as hell. So they both went back to their eternal life. So they both went back to who they really are. It's just one received a blessing to go with Jesus and not have to go through anything else on the other side. Where the other went exactly where he thought he was going to go. He went to a hellish condition and had to pull himself out of it. So don't think that one went one way, one went the other. No, they both ended where they're supposed to be. Just one went sooner than the other in a sense. But yeah, Jesus Christ took away the sins of the world. So if you take something away, it's not there anymore.
That's right.
So, and in a sense, there was really no sin. That's what he was waking them up to, the fact that there's no sin. So the one on the left, he took away that burden of sin. He took that guy's burden away of thinking, I'm going to die because of my sins and go to hell. He took it away from him right there. The other guy, he didn't get that relief, but he found out that there was no sin. He found out there was no hell.
Yes.
So once Jesus blessed the one, and the other one, Jesus thought, and I'm sure he thought in his mind, he didn't reach out to me. That's okay. When we get to the other side, we'll talk.
Yeah.
We'll talk. And he'll realize.
Jesus totally ignored that condition. He just totally ignored it. Because he knew he was going to have to go through a changing of the elements to get him to recognize anything.
Say yes.
And so he left him alone. Amen. So it's not a matter of he wasn't one of his. It was a matter of you've got to come yourself into a condition to where you recognize what is going on in your life in order for Jesus to be any good to you at all.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's just a dormant thing. It's
Right.
just another thing. And that man, somewhere, when he left here, came to that point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to skip a couple of things, but one of the things that I want to kind of look at, since we're talking about these dimensions, I think it was brother Wesley Dolphin that sent this to me on Messenger. And it said, these are a few dimensions that I think might be what we would call unknown, question mark. Kind of question what they are. I would appreciate your thoughts on them, and if others may have input on them for some discussion. And then he has here unknown conditions, unknown dimensions with a question mark. And here's the first one that he lists. The heavenly army surrounding Elijah in 2 Kings 6 and 17. What kind of a condition with that? If we're saying that, what kind of condition was that? If the sixth dimension is rest, and these armies were certainly ready to go to battle for Elijah if they needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly where were they?
Mm-hmm.
What were they? What dimension would we call that if they were in our old concept of dimensional bodies, of armies and horses and angels, and they were in these six-dimensional body? Exactly what would we call that dimension? What did Gehazi, what did he see?
I think he saw us. In the sense of pillar of fire, he saw into that realm, that us realm. A lot of us waiting to come here. I think he saw us standing around Elijah. He called it an army, mainly because he was looking at an army down there,
A term.
a term.
He didn't know what to call it.
Yeah, but I don't think there were people with shields and swords, and I think it was us. He saw the heavenly host, us, around Elijah. That's my thought. What dimension?
What dimension is us?
Yeah.
He saw into all of the dimensions, and he saw flesh standing there with him and with Elijah and all of their armies around them like they were going to do battle. And he saw the elements of invisible dimensions. He's seen all the dimensions to me. He looked into all of them, and he's seen a hellish army ready to attack us. He's seen a prophet and himself and others standing there in the flesh, standing between the two, and then he's seen us, a dimensional people, and that's where I was headed. I was I was wondering if anybody was going to mention it. But I believe he's seen us before we ever came here. He's seen us of those who had already came here and went back. It's a dimension of us. Let us make man in our image. And he looked in there and he saw all of those who were going to come, who were here, and who was already come.
Mm-hmm.
He's seen it all. He looked in to Sunset Mountain.
Yes.
He looked into the great configuration.
And I would go so far to add to that, that everyone that he saw were in the same condition. In other words, take for instance the thief that crossed over in unrest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was in that group. Ones that were still in a condition of unrest and that had not come to that peace when they transformed over, I think everyone that he saw was, for lack of a better term, positive energy. Because that's what he needed. He needed positive energy. He needed something to reassure and reshape his thinking in a positive way. So everyone he looked at was the positive side of whatever dimension, whatever place he was looking into.
You could call it holistic energy.
Yes, yes,
He saw people who had come to the holistic understanding.
yes, yes.
The ones who had not yet, they were not a part of that. No different to me than Sunset Mountain. There was a people there. Brother Branham said Moses was there, Elijah was there, Paul, all the prophets, the sages, and this and that and the other. I didn't hear him say anything about the ones who knew nothing, didn't come to an understanding being there. It was all of those who had come to a holistic understanding of who they are, what Jesus was doing, and what was the purpose of the hour. And I think that's what Gehazi has seen, is a group of people who had an understanding of what was going on, a holistic people. Sorry, I still have some more there. That he was able to break into and see. Elijah said, open his eyes and let him see. And the best way he knew to write was just said, oh my God, what an army. Just like James, over in the book of James, he talked about, go ahead, you kings and your riches, and do this and do that. Your riches will rust, and your thrones will be dethroned. And James goes through everything, and he says, for the Lord of Sabaoth has said this or done this, and is on the move. And I used to read it and I think, what does that mean? And I hurriedly looked it up one day, and it said Sabbath day, the Lord of the rest. I thought, well, okay, I can see that. It's a people of rest. But then when I zeroed in one day and I really dug in, Sabaoth means a mighty army of the Lord at rest. So they've come through all of their battles, and they have become peaceful warriors at rest. And James said, go ahead and gather all your riches and kill all the people you can kill and do everything, but it'll all die, it'll all be destroyed, it'll all go back to the earth, and the thing that will be left is the Lord of Sabaoth. Rest is what will be left. There won't be anything else left.
Yes.
Come to the rest that you need to come to. He goes on here, next one he lists is where King Saul met Samuel the prophet. 1 Samuel 28 and 15. As you know, if you go back and read, there was the witch of Endor was there, and Saul couldn't get a hold of the Lord to receive direction on what to do. And of course, Samuel was going on, and Saul, having known that Samuel and the Lord weren't going to deal with him, he went to the witch of Endor. And when he went to the witch of Endor, you know what witches do. They try their best to deceive you and make you think they have some kind of power. There's only one power, and that's the Holy Spirit. And so when when Saul went there, and he told her to call on the name of the Lord, I need an answer from the Lord. When she began to call, she didn't have a thing to do with it. But Samuel showed up. Just go back and read it very closely. She didn't conjure Samuel up from somewhere. Look at what the witch did. Look at what she said when it happened. She was scared to death. She was like, oh my God, there's an image here. She'd never had anything like that happen to her before. And Samuel only come there because that's where Saul was at. And that's where Saul had his mind set that he could find something. Did you know if you have your mind set and you perform what you have set in your mind, it'll produce. It'll produce. It's no different than in the beginning. Brother Branham made a statement. They said if marriage, having children outside the marriage laws is adultery, why did the Lord ever allow it? In other words, if me and some woman got together, there doesn't have to be a baby. I could get together 1,000 times with her. Not allowed because it's adultery. Not allow any life to come. But Brother Branham said that all life comes from the Lord. Whether it comes from adultery, whether it comes from fornication, whether it comes from wherever, all they are doing is performing a work of nature. And that nature has a law that produces life.
Right.
No matter if it's a bastard child, no matter if it's a female, no matter if it's a male, no matter if it's no matter what it is, no matter if it's a special child, all comes from the laws of nature that were created by us.
Yes.
And so that's the same way with this. There was a law of nature working, and when the witch of Endor began to call on that law of nature, Samuel showed up. And what dimension was he in?
Same as we talked about this. I don't think everyone is here. Everything is here. We may not see it, but it's all here. So Samuel knew Saul's need. Even though he wasn't here in the physical to see it, he knew what Saul's need was. Saul didn't just go to the witch and all of a sudden had that need. He had that need all the way through there. His need led him there. Saul knew that. Saul was there waiting on Samuel to get to the point that he can appear to him.
So Saul brought the dimension to the witch. And the dimension was right here in his mind. And her conjuring didn't do a thing.
No.
But Saul believed that it could. No different than voodoo or anything else. So voodoo will do that. It will if you believe it.
If you believe it.
I don't believe it. I got no worry about voodoo. None whatsoever. Or any of those other things. But Saul had a belief in his mind that if he could get to that woman, I can get my answer. And he didn't get the answer from the woman. The woman only stirred up the dimension in his mind that he wanted to begin with, and that was to talk to Samuel.
Right.
And Samuel comes up. He begins to break open an image from the earth. Where did that image come from? You say it came up from the earth. Well, Brother Branham said that the cloud that went 27 to 30 miles high, he said that image came up from the earth. It wasn't up there and flew down. Go read What is the Attraction on the Mountain. Brother Branham said it started as a little mist in the earth and went up into the cloud and formed itself. Same thing here. It started in the earth of Saul and formed itself into an image of Samuel because that's what Saul wanted to see.
Just like the woman with the blood issue. All she needed to do was touch the hem of his garment. Had nothing to do with the garment.
That's right.
It had nothing to do with anything Jesus was wearing. It was her getting to that point that she can change her elements, change her condition, and be healed.
She set the parameters
Yes.
of getting what she needed.
Yes.
And when they were all lined up, she got it.
Amen.
Yes.
It's the concept like this. Where did all of those angels that were 27 miles high, 30 miles across, where did they all come from? If they formed a little mist out of the earth, where did that come from? I can go back and point and show you where they came from. I can go back to Sirs, Is This the Time? And Brother Branham is talking about, he said, I was in my room, and he said, those angels, he was talking about the 7 angels, he said, those angels flew into me.
That's right.
Then he went up 3 months later onto Sunset Mountain, and those angels and all of us flew out of him
Yep.
and went to the heavens and showed ourselves.
That's right.
That's what happened.
Yep.
Saul had Samuel in him. Right here, right here. It was his prophet. It was his everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Saul needed to talk to that prophet, and he came out of him, formed his image. This time tomorrow, you will be with me. The witch didn't tell him that. The witch didn't conjure up Samuel or nothing. It all had to do with Saul and Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
And the dimension was right here
Mm-hmm.
in the mind of Saul. And he found rest within 24 hours.
Yes.
He was on the other side. Amen. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dimensions. How many dimensions are there, Brother Parnell? Brother Torrey? How many minds are there? So far, I know of at least 7.5 billion dimensions. Because there's 7.5 billion people living in the earth right now. And every one of us hold dimensions right here. I have dimensions that you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And you have dimensions that I don't have.
I was just thinking, how many dimensions are there? How many do you need? That's how many there are to use. How many you need?
That's right. Amen. Paul saw a man caught up to the third heaven in 2 Corinthians 12:2. Where was that? What dimension is that? Caught up to the third heaven. For me, when I think of that and see what Paul was writing about, it's very obvious that Paul was writing about himself, if you go read it. And a lot of people say, well, Paul came down here in this day and met a man. That could be true. That could be true. All scripture has compound meanings. But Paul was talking about himself at the moment, no different than David. When David wrote the scripture and said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? They pierced my hands and my feet. They walk about me as the bulls of Bashan. David was talking about himself. But a greater self was hanging on Calvary, screaming out those exact words. So you have people who were talking about themselves. He said, thou shalt not leave thy Holy One in hell, neither shalt thou let his body see corruption. Who do you think David was talking about? Himself. Nobody's going to take this throne from me. Samuel gave me the anointing, and you'll not leave your Holy One in hell, even though I committed adultery, even though I've done these things, even though I counted the people when I shouldn't have, even though I've done all these things wrong. You'll not leave your Holy One in hell, neither will you let his body see corruption. And it goes down hundreds and hundreds of years later, and Peter, preaching at the day of Pentecost, says, we know that David was not only speaking of himself, but of Jesus Christ, for he resurrected from the dead, and he never left his Holy One in hell, neither let his body see corruption. So the scriptures all have compound meanings, and they fulfill themselves time and time and time again. Amen. So this man that he saw caught up was himself, and also where we would come to in the third heaven, or whatever you might want to call it. You have, I said, the mind starts out as theophany, it comes into carnal, then it moves into spiritual. There's your third heaven. I seen a man who was caught totally up into this third heaven, into this spiritual realm, and he was speaking things that were unlawful, which is exactly what you're seeing going on now. That's why we're not too welcome in any of the message churches and things like that, because we're speaking things that are completely, totally unlawful when it comes to the spiritual side of things. We've broken past the laws and all those things. So I believe that dimension again was Paul's mind, and caught away to see himself and others like him in another day.
In a higher consciousness. I've
Also.
always equated that third heaven to a higher consciousness.
Yes.
That up until that time he was not able to get there because he wasn't able to.
Yeah.
But briefly he was able to lift up and see a higher consciousness.
Amen.
And in that higher consciousness, all these things that were said and done and talked about down in his consciousness was illegal.
Amen.
You'd be put to death for it. But in this higher consciousness, it's supposed to be.
Yes.
So I always equated the third heaven with a higher consciousness.
And it was Paul. Even if he saw himself in Daniel. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Paul was looking, I knew a man, that would be himself, caught away into Allen, third heaven.
Mm-hmm.
I knew a man caught away into Aubrey, third heaven.
Mm-hmm.
I was the man. I'm here now, and I'm going to leave here, and I'm going to be caught away 2,000 years down the road. I'm going to be living in the body of someone in the third heaven.
Right.
That's what's going on now, I believe, is we were in them, and now they are in us.
Right.
I in you, and you in me. Amen. Any more comments on that? Or where was Lazarus during his time in the tomb? What dimension was that? That's a good question. He was certainly somewhere where he could hear the voice of Jesus, because when Jesus said, Lazarus, come forth, wherever he was at, he busted back through everything, got back into that body that was all wrapped up. And, he didn't walk out of the tomb. A lot of people think he did, but he didn't. He scooted out of the tomb. He couldn't walk. He was wrapped up like a mummy. And then Jesus said, loose him, get those bands off of him, and let him go. Then he started walking. So we see this dimension that that Lazarus was in. For me, it's the same place that we have talked about the thieves on the cross. We are all our own dimensions. We have 7 core, and we are in all 7 of those at the same time, almost all the time. But then you have dimensions of your own. You go there some days riding in the car, and you climb in the car, and you get where you're going, you get out, and you stop for just a second, and you say, how did I get here? I don't remember driving here. I've done it a zillion times, and I think, gee, how many red lights did I run? Exactly what did I do? Because I don't remember anything.
Yeah.
You were in a dimension of your own that you don't remember traveling from Yellow Springs to Cincinnati, because maybe you didn't travel from Yellow Springs to Cincinnati. Maybe you just were there. And you kind of say, geez, I don't remember any of that. It's because you didn't go through it. You thought yourself there and you were there. And then you just, because of nature, because of everything else, you just convince yourself, well, I must have drove. And so I just, anybody asked, I drove to Cincinnati today. But you have dimensions of your own. I believe that's where Lazarus was. I believe that he was in that dimension that was Lazarus, and it was only him, and Jesus spoke to that mind, spoke to that person. Someone said, why didn't everybody named Lazarus come forth? Because they only spoke to the dimension where Lazarus was at. And Lazarus was there in his own mind, in his own dimension, and Jesus entered in and said, come on, Lazarus, come on back. Now. Not tomorrow, now. And he pulled him back. And that's why nobody else came back, because Jesus dealt personally with the dimension of Lazarus.
Right.
However many dimensions there was, he went in and dealt with Lazarus' dimensions alone.
Yeah. It's like the gap. What dimension is it? Where are you at in the gap? Right here. In your own dimension. Your dimension, not a dimension where everyone else is at, but your own dimension. So in the gap, that's where you're at. You're in a particular dimension of you.
Of you, yes, yes.
And he withdrew into that dimension and waited for that voice, knowing it was going to come. And when it didn't, then he just stepped right back into that body.
That's right. And no doubt in my mind, what's 4 days? I've used this example. I don't know. We're talking. The little dog I had, Honey. You say, oh, she's over there and she's trying her best. She wants to get back to you. She's barking. She's whining. She's caring. She wants you so bad. And oh, it's such a terrible condition, us being separated. She don't know we're separated. I'm here in a dimension so slowed down that I know we're separated.
Mm-hmm.
But to her, the second that door opens, it'll be like it was just a moment. It'll be like Dad went to work today.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly the way Lazarus was. 4 days didn't mean anything. Rotten body didn't mean anything. Cave nose didn't mean anything. Rocks in the way, none of that meant anything. He was in a dimension where when he heard the call, just like that, he came back out of it. And then all of those things take care of themselves.
Right.
Amen. So Lazarus' personal dimensions of his mind is where he was at and was called back from there. To finish out his life, I always liked that 12th chapter, the 11th chapter of John. He gets called back from the dead. And then in the 12th chapter it says, and Mary and Martha had a supper and invited Jesus, and Lazarus was there. And I really like that, because after every time that you go into the gap, that personal dimension of your own, every time you go in there and you come back out, there's a supper waiting on you. And you're going to enjoy where you were at, and you're going to think about it. Lazarus enjoyed where he was at, thought about it, and Lazarus and Jesus were having fellowship together at the Last Supper, or at the marriage of the Lamb, if you want to call it that. They had a great marriage, a great relationship, and a supper was formed. Amen. Unconditioned to consciousness, the gap. Daniel's already talked about it. That's why I was pointing it out, and I said, look at this. It was right here, and you took off on it.
You took off on the gap.
Unconditioned consciousness for the gap, or your I am, before you add anything after it. Where is that at? It is your own personal place. It is your own mind. It is your own conditions. It's those things of yours personally
Mm-hmm.
that only you can enter.
Right.
And then you can come back and create a supper with me and we can enjoy it together.
Yeah. And there's a difference between I am and I am that I am. Notice Jesus, when he talked about I am the way, the truth, the life, that was his personal space. That was his personal dimension.
Yeah.
But it did expand out from there. I am that I am now is him adding more to it.
Yes, that's true. There's one other question about dimensions. What dimension is liquid light? I like that thought. Liquid light. How many of you know what liquid light is? Have you seen it before? It's a liquid. It's like the glow, the liquid light.
Like you're talking about glow stick
It
type
moves
of.
about. Yeah, but it's certainly not the glow stick.
Right.
But there's a scientific. They use it to do things with.
Plasma.
Plasma, yes. Liquid light. What dimension is that? You know, it's what they're saying. You have light. It's like to me, it's like water. Water is a dimension of its own. It can be a solid, it can be a liquid, and it can be a vapor. If you heat it enough, it turns into vapor. If you freeze it enough, it turns into ice, and if you leave it alone and not freeze it, it will go back to a liquid. It's got all kinds of different light. To me, is a complete mixture of all dimensions. And to me, liquid light would be exactly that. It's just a different form of light.
Able to transform itself into any form or shape that it needs to.
Yes. Amen.
Interesting.
What time is it now?
8:34.
Okay.
Don't be skipping pages.
I was trying to figure out what this end piece right here was from. I don't see it anywhere.
Even how this stuff is.
I didn't, for some reason, I lost a page. I'll find it. If I have to go back on the computer, I'll find it.
Right there.
Okay, this is it right here. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I want to mention one of them. This is Brother Romson Yaves. I want to mention one of them, change. It'll use all the other elements and dimensions to bring himself out physically, spiritually. It used even the zodiac. It's very amazing to observe how this dimension called the change affects everything. It's like a tunnel. Thank you so much. It's my contribution by Brother Romain of the Ivory Coast. So he's out of the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire. And what he's saying is he sees change as a dimension. I think he's hitting on what it really is when he says it uses all the other dimensions. I can see that. I think change itself, I don't know that it by itself is a dimension. You could certainly say that, but change is the result of what you do with your dimensions.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Whatever that result might be. Good, great paths, correct paths, paths that are harder than other ways. You know, the angel told Brother Brennan, because you've chosen the harder path, the more narrow way, a great portion of heaven awaits you. You know, and so there are harder ways you can choose. There are paths you can choose that the change will be different than other paths. But if you have a comment on it, but what I kind of see it the way he said, everything that's going on changes the result of those things and the personal things that are happening in you.
I look at it as a process. How do I get from this seat to the seat next to Aubrey? I change my seat. I get up out of this one and go through the process to go there. It's
Yes.
going from one to another. It's evolution, it's our growth, it's everything we do, everything in life,
It's your thought, it's
Yes.
it's everything.
everything is change.
To go from here to there, you will use every core dimension
Mm-hmm.
and a whole lot more.
Right, right. So if someone wants to look at that as a dimension, that's fine. To me, it's a process of going from one to another.
Yes. A sister wrote this, Sister Elizabeth Parson. Thank you for inviting us to a dimensional feast or discussion. Would like to discuss intimacy. How do we look at intimacy as a dimension?
That's connecting dimensions.
Yes.
That's connecting dimensions.
Intimacy,
Connecting dimensions.
connecting dimensions. Okay, I'm sitting just thinking through a lot of things right now.
Intimacy is love. And you're right. It's love. It's a process of love. It could be us sitting here is a form of intimacy, or intimacy between a man and woman. However you look at it, it's a form of love.
Developing relationships,
Relationship,
right?
yes, yes. If you get into a fight with someone, that's an intimacy of anger. It's, and I'll tell you guys about that later. But but it is a act of love. To me, that's what intimacy is, an act of love. Now, I mean, how deep is love? How deep is your love? How much do you love something? How less do you love something? I mean, how the depth that you go into that's the depth of the intimacy you'll have with that
It is.
object that you're trying to love.
It's a connection.
It's a connection.
Yeah. It's a connection. How much you invest yourself into
Yes.
what you're connected
Yes.
with.
Yes.
I was thinking about that song when you kept talking about love and how it holds us together. With it, Captain and Tennille. Love.
Yeah.
Love will keep us together.
Keep us together.
So like in atoms, you can have like hydrogen and oxygen, and they make 2 bonds. In other ones, you can have 4. Other ones, you might have 1. So there's different degrees of connectedness depending on that, if it's covalent and whatnot.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
So
That's right.
that could be what you're like, maybe the type of what you're saying.
Yes. Everything we do in life is love. You know, we term it good, bad, right, wrong, however you want to term it. It's all an act of love. It's your passion for something.
And the amount of passion that you put into it strengthens the connection
Right.
that she's talking about
Right.
between the different, between everything.
Yeah.
I say the different thing. Everything is connected. It's like a web of life. And intimacy is really what holds it together.
Yes.
It becomes personalized. You know, you can be you can feel very strong about something, but it may not be personalized to you. To where when it becomes personalized, then there's a bond in that connection that's
Right.
formed that really can't be broken. So, yeah, in intimacy, it's taking something, it's taking a connection and personalizing.
Yes. Making it personal.
Yes.
You know, no matter what it is in life, I'll just use the example of the young man. I say young, he's about my age now. We were young men at one time, but Joey Joseph Whitlock. He and I grew up together out on the little farms out in Dayton, Indiana, and we moved from the farms into a little town, and we were still together of Dayton, and we done the baseball, the basketball, and the football, and we done you know, the getting out and running around the little hick town together, sneaking out at night together, doing odds, and we formed a bond, an intimacy. I'm not talking about a sexual thing. I'm talking about an intimacy, a connection. And then he grew up. I grew up. I moved to Hamilton. He grew up. He moved to the Bahamas. That intimacy has never, ever been broken.
Right.
It's inseparable. There have been people, and he and I were talking today, and there have been people who have said everything about me to him. Family people, church people, because most church people disagree with me, and most family people disagree with me even more. So, you know, and he said, I pay, when they start in on you, Don, I pay no attention to them, because I grew up with you, and I know you, and I know your love, and I know your heart. And I said, Joey, I feel the same way about you. And I said, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing for you, because something on the inside said he needs help. And I couldn't just sit idle and not do it. There was an intimacy that connected and formed in the early years of our life that no matter what happened, it could not break it. It just couldn't break it.
And that's a sign of a true relationship.
Yes.
Because once a true relationship is formed, you can never break that. You can't.
Yeah. And I told him, I said, people that I personally know here in America, I said, Joey, they have donated. You know, and when I say personally know, I have a relationship with them. Like different, your names are on the donation list, so I'm not like I'm exposing anything, but like Sister Aubrey, she put $50 in. Different ones put 25 or 30 or 40, and they're people that are close to me and have a relationship. And then I have family who's been with me all of my life, and because I changed in my understanding, well, they wouldn't put a penny's donation in there. No names are there, no nothing's there. They wouldn't put it in there. If you held a gun to their head, I don't think some of them would put it in there. Because of me. And it's supposed to be, this guy is on his last leg. He's got nothing left. He's got 2 pair of shorts and a pair of shoes and a couple of shirts to wear. He's got no money. He's got nothing. He's got nowhere to turn to, I feel like, except us, except me, you know. And yet, all of these silly little quirks. Well, I'm not going to put nothing. I'm not going to do that. I'm not. I know their feelings because I don't see their names there.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I will tell you, if you're watching, which some of you will later because you don't want to see your name on the thing, listen to me. If you don't like me, start your own fund for him. At least do something for him. Instead of sitting back and saying, well, I would have, but Don started doing this. Love him. Forget about me. Love him. And do something for him. That's what intimacy will do. It will look over the top of everything, and it'll do what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
That's what intimacy really is.
And it's eternal. It'll never, ever go away.
And it comes from the heart, not the head. Make no mistake.
Right.
It's not an intellectual thing.
Amen.
It's heartfelt.
Amen. Okay. I've done it again now. I had it figured out here for a while.
It was just there. You talking about this one?
Yeah.
It's on that same page as
It's
yours.
on that same page, you just lay
It's the
down,
end of
there's the
that.
beginning, there's the end of it, right there. So you go from this page to this page.
No,
You know
it's-
where that
but-
one ends and that,
But it's not, see, that's,
it's not lining up.
that's Wesley, Brother Wesley Dolphin. So it's not lining up. But here's,
Oh, I
the-
see.
see what I'm saying?
Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there. Don't you think?
Okay.
Maybe. I'm not, I remember reading them before and it's not connecting, but I'll get it figured out. So we're at the point where I'm gonna read this about dimensions anyway. And that is, dimensions is the realm where the Great Spirit operates. Dimension is the realm where the Great Spirit operates. There are people who are able to catch up with the flow and have understanding of the movement, while there are those who resist and attack the movement. Nonetheless, both are essential and are tools so that the Spirit can work at his best in contrast. So what he's saying is dimension, no matter how many, is procreated or brought about by the Spirit wanting to move people through that process, the Spirit being us.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for us to understand the process that we came through, you need to ride on a razor blade and be a falling to the left and to the right and have a total contrast in the middle of the dimension, whatever that dimension might be. So it's the Great Spirit creating contrast in every single person, situation, place, everything, creating contrast. And that's what they're saying dimensions really are.
It's a good explanation. Good definition.
And I'm not sure who wrote that. But it is very good.
We'll give Connie the credit for that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As I ponder and think on dimensions, I've come to understand that we are not actually living in dimensions. We are the dimensions. And I agree with that totally, since I wrote it. But at first, for years and years and years, the concept was we're living in dimensions, and there are devils, and there are evil spirits, and there are good spirits, and there are holy spirits, and there are, you know, on and on and on. There are diseases, and there are everything, and they're all living in dimensions, and we all kind of, it's like the WWF. We all kind of jump in the ring and see who comes out with the golden belt, you know. And I just, I've come to a better understanding that I know that we are not living in dimensions that way. We are the very dimensions. And diseases and battles and contrasts and joy and peace and rest and all of these things lay within us. We're the dimension. And we have to partake of it all. Take the bite out of the apple, if you want to call it that. It's not a Freudian slip. It's take the bite out of the apple and taste everything. Taste it all. And you will do it because you created it for yourself. You created it for you. Everything that you're eating, everything that you're doing, all the connection that you have, you created it for you.
Yes, yes.
And in so doing, making you yourself a better person with a higher consciousness that is able to connect, that is able to come to intimacy. Though it may look like there are 7 dimensions, really there are more than that, many more. Every individual and everything is a multifaceted, multidimensional entity. There are more to things than meets the eye or the mind. We were only introduced to limited dimensions of us because of our limited intellect, but our potentials are limitless and waiting to be discovered. The human genetic code takes up 3% of our brain, while 97% is unknown. Seems alien to me. There's more of ourselves to discover, and we have barely scratched the surface. Amen. Author, unknown. But I really believe that. I believe that we are constantly discovering, and there's so much more to discover. We have discovered so far, what we have discovered so far is the evolution of our soul. I like this. So far is the evolution of our soul, which is also upgrading our genetic code. As we download that unexpressed knowledge, or as we go through all these things, as we download that unexpressed knowledge simultaneously, we are upgrading our human selves. Download and we upgrade. There is so much potential in human beings waiting to be raptured. Our awakening is rapturing us to supernatural people through divine love, intervention, and intimacy. So we are at that point in our lives. It's been going on all the time. But we've come to an evolution, a time in our life when now we're starting to understand it.
Right.
We're starting to see it. So now, everything that we stepped on, all the ground. Moses, when you bring your people out of Egypt, this is where we were at for centuries. Moses, when you bring your people out of Egypt, you tell them everything around them is full of sin. Everything around them is unclean. And I want them to look straight forward. Don't look to the left or to the right. Don't step to the left or to the right, but walk straight forward, stay right behind you. And if they do anything else, they will fall into folly and fall into sin. That's where we were at.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And then we got across the River Jordan, broke into a whole new world, and the Lord speaks to Joshua. The Spirit in Joshua says, take a look around. We're going into this land, and every place that you set your foot is yours. Don't worry about left, right, backwards, forwards, up, down, mad, glad, sad, happy. Every place that you set your foot is yours. Now, can we believe that?
Right.
But I'm worried about my daughter. She's on drugs. She's this, she's that, Brother Mark. Every place that you set your foot spiritually in her home and say, I'm going to help her out of this. My very connection, my very love is going to pull her or him or them from this situation. And believe with all of your heart that the land is yours. And watch it all come to pass. And stop worrying about what kind of condition they are going to get themselves into, and start thinking about, I am powerful enough to bring them into the right condition if they are not where they're supposed to be. I can bring them to a higher consciousness. I can bring them to a greater intimacy. I can be such a person that they will fall in love with me, and without them even knowing it, my influence will bring them to a higher consciousness.
Right.
That's where we come to.
Yes.
We know where we're at now. The land is not partially ours, and we are not just passing through. Everybody says, well, I'm just passing through. Not me. This is my land. I'm staying right here. And it's my land, and I have all of it under my feet to bring it to the understanding and bring it to the intimacy that all of it needs to be in. Amen. Dimensions. So how do you feel like they affect you? Just for a few minutes. What is it that makes everything mesh together for you?
Well, it sure does reflect a lot of life. You know, cycles bring out patterns that help us review things and see things, see progression. But you can't disconnect life from that.
Yeah.
Dimensions are life. Any dimension that you want to look at has life in it, because it has to. It has to be alive. It has to be active to feel it, to do something with it.
Amen.
So what it does for me personally is it wakes me up to the vastness of me, how I am connected to every living thing. Now, for some people are city folks. They love the sound of the city and the people and the cars. And me, I'm kind of the opposite. I like to sit on the side of a mountain and listen to the water in a river moving across the rocks and the wind through the trees. But it's all life. And I see the difference.
Yes.
And I realize that even though someone's a city person and I'm a mountain person, there's a connection there.
There's a connection.
There's a connection there that's unbreakable. And so I guess that's what it does for me, is it just, it proves the oneness of this Spirit to me.
Amen.
I
Amen.
guess is a simple way to put it.
And yeah, I agree with that. It proves the oneness of the Spirit in the simplest of ways.
Yes.
When it's all said and done and the details all broken down, I heard a song one time that said, "My heart has so many cracks in it, but they are cracks that were needed, so her love," speaking of a love between men, so her love could filter in. And I kind of like that. I thought all of us need to have those cracks. We all need to be broken, time and time and time again, so the intimacy of one another can flow in.
Right.
We're open. Amen. Anyone else? Anything on your heart? I was thinking about the whole concept of intimacy and how it holds and connects you together. And again, I'm coming back to this whole donation for Joey, who lived in the Bahamas. And I see Africa and the Philippines being the large majority of the people who are donating. Some here, some that when I look at their name, I know they've been through personal disaster, personal hurt. They know what it is. But Africa and the Philippine people, all across Africa and the Philippines, I see their names and I think they know what hurt is. They know what poor is. They know what disaster is. They know what going through typhoons and hurricanes and droughts and when the government comes in and wants to do genocides and purgings, and they know what it is. And when they see somebody in that condition, their heart says, you know, I might not have much, but oh God, I have a little. Sure. I can help with. Sure.
I've been there.
Yes.
So
you
it's
do.
like I've been there
Yes.
and I know what it's like.
Yes. And other than a handful of people, American people don't know that. It doesn't touch them.
No.
It
Right.
just doesn't touch. The reason it touches me so deep is because I have held babies in my hands, in my arms, and watched the breath go out of them, starving to death in third world countries. I've looked at piles of bodies piled up in trash piles higher than this house. I've seen it. I've smelled it when you couldn't catch your breath. You just had to hold your and get away. That's why I feel the intimacy of I gotta help. I'm connected to this. Africa, Philippines, many of these places, even though you have been through the most horrible disasters in the world, you are the most precious and the most blessed people because you're able to feel for others in a way that many of the Europeans, many of the Americans, many of the Canadians, we just don't know how to feel that. And it's that's this whole connection. I like what Sister Aubrey said. Intimacy of all of this web brings us together in love. Amen. $3,000 body bags in one little town. Stench so bad that they couldn't even catch their breath. You'll never see that reported.
No.
No.
And unless somebody films it, you'll never see it. Unless somebody from one of the audience that has it on the phone, that brings it over and manages it to get it out somehow, some way, public, you'll never hear of it. You just won't.
Amen. Amen. With love. All of it with love. We love you with all of our hearts.
You know, I want to keep coming back on my mind. What you just said, as Americans, we're kind of disconnected from that. But look what happened to the natives here.
Yes.
They were totally stripped of everything they had, including their own lifestyle, their own beliefs. They were told they could no longer live a certain lifestyle. They could no longer believe a certain way. Even their languages, everything about them, including their very lives, was stripped from them, and they were put on a little piece of land, an island, and left there to exist. And this is right in the heart of America. If you think it's not going on, take a drive out to some of these reservations up there in Wyoming and some of the ones in Texas, some of the Apache reservations. Go on and look and see how these people live.
Lakota, Crow.
Yeah, the Cheyenne. Look at what today, all these years later of being stripped, in the midst of all this prosperity, they live like a third world country.
Yes.
And yet, we're disconnected from it.
Amen. Amen.
Aubrey and I just came back from a town, and I'm not going to mention a town in case somebody's listening and lives there. But we just came back from one of the, I don't know if it's one of the richest cities in the world, but some of the richest people in the world live in the city. Now, everywhere you went were homeless. Tents, people sleeping out in the street, everywhere. And I mean, our hotel, this was a really nice hotel in downtown the city. And you walk out the door and you go 1 block left, 1 block right, doesn't matter which way you go, straight, backwards, doesn't matter. There's somebody sleeping on the street. There's homeless with tents. There's people that have absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around thinking, people here are filthy rich. They can make a change. They can make a difference in somebody's lives. But yet, and it's right in the middle of one of the richest places in the world.
Amen.
And there's one section, we were on our way to a wedding party, and we got maybe a mile and a half down the road, and the whole area was a homeless area. Under the highway, on the road, on the side roads. The sidewalk was wider there, and they had more room to stretch out, but it was tons of them. I mean, hundreds of homeless lining the roads, and nobody does anything about it. Blows my mind. Blows my mind. And somebody said, well, they put themselves in that condition. Well, you never know what life has brought to them to get them to that condition.
Yeah,
Doesn't
that's
mean
right.
that you have to let them stay in that condition. Do something. Get something. It just boggles my mind.
Yeah, it does mine. It does mine.
And some people, they try to cover themselves with cardboard.
Yes, they do.
I know what you're talking.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I've been there, like 30 years ago. So I know.
Lean-tos, what we call them.
Mhm.
Yeah. And when I was in Haiti, it was just, they had a stick and a piece of tin off of the roof. Prop the stick up, put it through a hole in a tin, and lay in there.
Yeah.
Cover yourself from the weather, the rain,
Mhm.
all those things. Yes. Very sad situation.
Yeah.
Intimacy connects us. We are moving to a higher consciousness and becoming aware of these things in our life and having intimacy and feeling and love, compassion, and a desire to make things better is what will take us there.
Yes.
It will take us there.
And you'll see the contrast becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. The
Yeah.
more you're enlightened, the more you become aware of, the contrast will become stronger and stronger.
Amen.
Love will keep us together.
Amen. I think I sent that to Brother Jess Santos. He put out a little something and it said, love will keep us together. And I sent that song to him. Amen. As we stand here in our little group here on Tuesday evening together, Wednesday morning for many of you, reach in the middle with us. Let's pull our strength together. Let's pull humanity up. Let's bring it higher. Let's bring its consciousness more into the spirit, more into the spirituality and the understanding of who we are. And let's lift ourselves up out of these culturistic problems, thoughts, ideas, races, everything else. And let's love one another. Love one another beyond all things. Take a hold of the intimacy of all these things that we're teaching and bring a connection between one another. Heal our bodies, be with us, lead us, help us. In the name of Jesus Christ, we ask all of these things. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. You're dismissed in the name of the Lord.
There's brownies in there if anybody would like some.
Right.